Hello. Hello? Hello! Sorry, I'm experimenting with this. I'm uploading right from YouTube right now. I'm Zach Kyle. I'm going to be recording my IOP practice presentation here with you right now. Um, yeah, IOP practice. My topic or argument is that the two writers that we have looked at so far in class and their respective pieces, the things they carried by Tim O'Brien and Into the Wild by John Krakauer. The authors use writing those pieces and their writings in general as a way to cope with problems that they have of their own and their past experiences, maybe. For example, Tim O'Brien was a Vietnam soldier who went to Vietnam and fought in the war, and he's I'm pretty sure coming out of a place like that. I mean, after reading the things they carried and just having general knowledge of the Vietnam War, you probably have enough problems that you might not want to write a book, but actually see a therapist. But Tim O'Brien chose to write a book, and it's a great book. I liked it myself, but you don't care because I'm here to tell you why he wrote it, and I believe that's because it was a way to cope with his problems. Just as kind of like a little forewarning, the project, I mean, I still got to work out the kinks in it and everything. There's still some bumps along the way that I got to figure out. I don't really have anything at all on Into the Wild. I kind of want to cut that out unless I'm gonna have it as like a backup thing during my presentation, in case I need to chew up another 2 minutes or so. But I mean, I really like talking about Tim O'Brien and the things they carry, just because I think there's more ammo for it. No pun intended, ammo. Tim O'Brien being a Vietnam soldier, but yeah, I think that Tim O'Brien's argument has a lot more to offer than John Krakauer's as far as coping mechanisms. So let's get started. Yeah, Vietnam soldier and Tim O'Brien writes this book um, about this group of soldiers who went to war together. And yeah, they fought in the war. But my problem with the book is it's not really a problem. It's just an interesting thing that I picked up on, and I believe is that some of these characters don't actually exist. Some of these characters in the book are made up and used as literary tools themselves to help Tim O'Brien cope with the reality that he is an ex-soldier who's got some pretty bad memories, and he's got to figure out a way to deal with them. So yeah, he has these soldiers that these some of them aren't even soldiers. Like for example, I'll talk about his daughter named Kathleen, who yeah, Tim O'Brien doesn't have a daughter. Um, but yeah, I'll talk about that. But to start, if you took every single character in this book and threw them into a pot, stirred it around over a hot stove, after stirring it around for a little while, Tim O'Brien would pop out. You would have a Tim O'Brien stew. Um, so let's start by talking about Rat Kiley. This character really jumped out at me when I read the book, and after going back and looking at it and studying it even a little bit further. Rat Kiley is the storyteller of the platoon, as well as the medic. Rat has a knack for telling stories, and so does Tim O'Brien, coincidentally. Um, yeah, Tim O'Brien actually spends a whole chapter of the things they carried talking about how, if you can put your own spin on a story or something, you can deliver any message that you want, no matter what it's really about. Um, yeah, and Rat Kiley does the same thing. He's a storyteller. He told this great story about Marianne in the Sweetheart of the Song for Trabong chapter. Um, and he likes to put his own spin on things himself. Um, we read on page 85, O'Brien says, if Rat told you, for example, that he'd slept with 4 girls in one night, you could figure that it was about a girl and a half. It wasn't a question of deceit, just the opposite. He wanted to heat up the truth, to make it so hot that you felt exactly what he felt. 85 again, Tim O'Brien, the things they carried. But yeah, I mean, Rat was the storyteller. Rat tells stories much like Tim O'Brien tells stories. Earlier on in the book, I believe, yeah, it's on the chapter on the Rainy River where Tim O'Brien is debating whether to go to war or not, sitting in a boat with an old man. And he's on a river, and he's talking about what he's feeling on the boat. And listen and tell me if you think that this sounds anything like what Brat Kiley tries to put into his stories. Tim O'Brien says on page 54 in the book, "Inside me, in my chest, I felt a terrible squeezing pressure. Even now, as I write this, I can still feel that tightness. And I want you to feel the wind coming off the river, the waves, the sea, the silence, and the wooded frontier." And it's really about Rat Kiley wanting you to feel the story just as much as Tim O'Brien does. That's where I feel Tim O'Brien makes the connection to the audience. Like, hey, listen, I want you to hear this story and I want you to feel it. And I don't know if that's as much of a coping mechanism as it is maybe an example of how he puts himself in the book. But I definitely, it is a coping mechanism because at the same time, through these stories, Tim O'Brien is reliving his past and, it's self therapy by telling these stories. And, yeah, I want to move on to Kathleen, Tim O'Brien's daughter. Yeah, we know that Tim O'Brien doesn't have a daughter. He actually made up this character, and he went into some pretty detail in doing it. Yeah, Kathleen is his young daughter, who I believe Tim O'Brien uses as a tool to talk to himself through his problems. We read right here on page 33. Let me find my quote. "My daughter tells me that I should write about a little girl who finds $1 million and spends it all on a Shetland pony. In a way, I guess she's right. I should forget it. But the thing about remembering is that you don't forget." Excuse me. But, Tim O'Brien's daughter never said that he should write about this girl who finds $1 million and buys a Shetland pony. Tim O'Brien thinks that, why the hell am I writing about Vietnam? I need to be writing about a little girl who buys a pony with $1 million. Isn't there anything better than talking about Vietnam in my life? It stuck with him. He can't escape it. He was there in the 1960s and he's still there today, or when he was writing this book. um, it's inevitable. It's there with him. It's a part of him. It's something that he carries. Yeah, but I almost feel like Kathleen. Yeah, Tim O'Brien uses it as a tool to talk to himself. Good Tim, bad Tim. It's like the little angels on the movies, the angel and the devil. Yeah, your conscience. He's talking to himself. He's having a conversation with himself. I want to talk about Azar. Evil Azar. Yeah, the same Azar that blew up Ted Lavender's puppy with a claymore. Um, Tim O'Brien makes Azar to be out this makes out Azar to be this really bad guy, which he is. He has his flaws and whatnot, but I honestly think that maybe Tim O'Brien doesn't use Azar to show us how bad Azar is. Everybody's gonna have a bad guy in the book. No, I think that Tim O'Brien uses the character Azar to show how immature he was in Vietnam and how immature everyone around him was. And maybe immaturity and the thought process and everything. Uh, maybe he can cope with a couple mistakes that way. Uh, Azar, he's young. I mean, we know that the average soldier in Vietnam was 19 or 20 years old. And Ted Lavender's excuse for blowing up, no, Azar's excuse for blowing up Ted Lavender's puppy is, I'm just a boy. I don't know any better, you know? I honestly think that Tim O'Brien put Azar in there as a little bit of his youth, just to remind him, I'm not 40-year-old Tim O'Brien that I am today, writing about Vietnam and trying to deal with it that way. On top of immaturity and everything, and just since Azar kind of goes in the same thing, I want to talk about Jorgensen, the medic the medic that took over after Rat Kiley was done. Jorgensen, he choked while Tim O'Brien got shot, and Tim O'Brien was never really able to forgive him. That makes me wonder, after talking about mistakes that happened in the shit field with Kiowa dying and everything, There's a lot of things that you must struggle with as a Vietnam soldier, and forgiveness for yourself, for other people, as we see in the story with Jorgensen. It's a big part of this book is forgiveness. Forgiving yourself, forgiving others, and he really puts that into. Are you kidding me? And he really puts that into. Sorry, my computer locked up for a second. And that he really puts that into effect here with Jorgensen. I'm sorry, I'm all lost now. Um, did Norman Bowker ever forgive himself for letting Kiowa die that night in the field? He O'Brien uses these elements of the story through Bowker and in the story with Jorgensen. Um, to kind of sympathize with himself. Should I forgive myself for these mistakes that I've made? Should I forgive other people for the mistakes? Should I forgive Lieutenant Jimmy Cross for being negligent and daydreaming about his girlfriend back home when Ted Lavender got shot and it was all his fault? Tim O'Brien struggles with these things, and you can tell just by reading the book. It's there. And also, the immaturity thing goes back to Azar somehow accompanying Tim O'Brien on this escapade that was obviously really immature. Um, so there's another point to, the immaturity piece of it all. Uh, Sympathizing with himself about that. And finally, I want to touch upon really briefly, just because I don't know how long YouTube will let me go, the man Tim O'Brien killed. Um, Maybe in reality, Tim O'Brien killed another man, but I really interpret this chapter in a way that maybe Tim O'Brien killed himself kind of in Vietnam. You know, these things that happened in Vietnam to him, seeing these things, I mean, watching Kurt Lemon in 15 different parts on a tree, picking them off, watching people shake a dead man's hand and having a conversation with them. Um, this. I mean, you dead people are all around this book, and I honestly think that maybe Tim O'Brien was talking about himself when he said he killed a man. Maybe it goes back to Vietnam and the sweetheart of the song Trebong and Martha being consumed by the Vietnam wilderness. Tim O'Brien really put this in here just to remind us, whether he killed a man or not, that Vietnam takes a hold of you, makes you a whole nother person, and spits you out as a desensitized war machine. I wonder how that feels. But Tim O'Brien, the way that he deals with it, he puts it on paper and publishes it up for us to read. That's about all that I got right now. I really hope to polish it off, get a couple more examples in there, and definitely condense it. I blab a lot, I get kind of nervous in front of the camera. I'm quite camera shy. But yeah, I hope that this has been satisfactory, and I hope that I can do good on Friday. Thanks a lot.